Okay, so today's lesson is section 8.2, and we're going to focus on fractions, decimals, and percents. So fractions, decimals, and percents, they are different ways to show the exact same value. So in today's lesson, we're going to focus on the connections between the three of them and how to change a fraction to a percent to a decimal to a fraction, etc. Okay, so let's get started. Today's lesson will be shorter than the one previously, which is nice. So example 1, convert fractions to decimals and percents. So in example 1, we're given fractions. We want to change them into a decimal and into a percent. So I'll start with my fraction here and I'll change it into a decimal first. And you can change it into a decimal by using your calculator. Just going 1 divided by 20 in your calculator, press the equal sign, and you get 0.05. Okay, and then we want to take that and change it into a percent. So the way that we change a decimal into a percentage is we would multiply it by 100. So in our calculator, you go 0.05 times 100 and you end up with 5%. Okay, so we'll practice that a few times, then I'll let you try some questions on your own. So example B, we have 71 over 200. So first I'd like to change that into a decimal. I'll just use my calculator. 71 divided by 200, and I get 0.355 as my decimal. And then to change it into a percentage, I multiply it by 100. So I move the decimal over 2 spots, 35.5%. And last example, 4 over 3. So first I'll change it into a decimal. So using my calculator, I go 4 divided by 3, and that gives me 1.33 repeated. So that's my decimal. And now I want to change it into a percentage. So I take my decimal value, multiply it by 100, and I end up with 133.3 repeated percent. Okay, so I'd like you to pause the video now and I'd like you to try the 3 examples below. Okay, so you can check your answers over to the try questions. You use your calculator to calculate the decimal, and then you multiply it by 100 to get the percent value. Okay, so moving on to example 2, now we're going to start with a decimal and we're going to change it to a percent and a fraction. So let's change it to a percent first. So to take a decimal and turn it into a percent, we multiply it by, so to turn it into a percent, once again, we multiply it by 100. So 3.26 times 100 is 326%. Okay, and then we want to turn that percentage into a fraction. So when we're dealing with percents, what it really means is we have, for example, 326 over 100. So there's our fraction, and you need to make sure that you put it into lowest terms. So we can divide both of them by 2, and we end up with 163 over 50 as our final answer. So 326 over 100 is correct, but it's not in lowest terms. So let's try example B. we're going to take that decimal and turn it into a percent. So we'll times it by 100. So 12.5%. And now we want to turn that into a fraction. So a percentage means over 100. So we have 12.5 over 100. Now we don't like to have decimals in our fractions, so we need to multiply it by 10 to move the decimal over one spot. Whatever we do to the top, we do to the bottom. Multiply it by 10 on the bottom as well. So we have 125 over 1,000. So that would be that is correct, but it needs to be put into lowest terms. So we can divide them both by 25. And we end up with 1 over 8 as our final answer. Okay, and let's move on to example C. We want to turn that into a percentage, so we multiply 0.0032 by 100. So we have 0.32%. It's a very small number, very small percent, and we want to write that as a fraction. So having the percent sign there means that it's really over 100. So we have 0.32 over 100. Now we don't like decimals in our fractions, so we're going to have to multiply the top by 100 because we want to move it over 2 spots. And we do the same thing to the bottom, so that we have 32 over 10,000. And we need to then put that into lowest terms. We can divide them both by 16 so that we have 2 over 625. So I'd like you to pause the video and try the examples for example 2 on the second page. Okay, so you can check over your examples for try. I've put the percentages up top here and the fractions at the bottom. So keep in mind the fractions have to be in lowest terms. So if you got 64 over 10,000, you need to put it in lowest terms. If you got 268 over 1,000, you need to put it in lowest terms, divide them both by 4. And if you got 598 over 100, you need to put them in lowest terms. Divide them both by 2. Okay, moving on to example 3. Now we're given percentages. We want to turn them into fractions and then decimals. So we have 160%. So let's turn it into we can turn it into a fraction first. So we have 160 over 100, and that's our fraction, but we need to make sure it's in lowest terms. So I can divide them both by 20, and I end up with 8 over 5. Okay, and then I need to turn that into a decimal. And for that, you can just use your calculator. So 8 divided by 5 gives us a value of 1.6. Of course, you could have taken the percent and turned it into a decimal first by dividing by 100 as well. That would have been okay. Question B here. So let's turn that into a fraction. So 0.35 over 100. We don't like decimals in our fraction, so I'm going to have to multiply 0.35 by 100 and do the same thing to the bottom so that I have 35 over 10,000, and I need to put that into lowest terms. I think I can, looks like I can divide them both by 5 so that we have 7 over 2,000. Okay, and then turning it into a decimal, just use your calculator. 0.0035. And example C here, we have 25 3/5%. I'm just going to rewrite that as 25. 3 divided by 5 is really 0.6. So I'm going to rewrite that as 25.6%. Turn that into a fraction. So 25.6 over 100. I need to get rid of the decimal, so I times the top and the bottom both by 10. So I have 256 over 1,000, and then putting it into lowest terms, you end up with 32 over 125. And then I need to put that as a decimal. So 0.25256. So I'd like you to pause the video and try the 3 examples at the bottom. Okay, so you can look over your answers for the try questions. I've put the fractions in lowest terms, so just double check that you, if you didn't get the correct answer, that you did in fact put them in lowest terms. And then the decimals here, 7.5, 0.003, and 0.1275. Okay, so moving on to the last page of the notes. It's a quick word problem. James is out for a jog on a sunny day. He's currently running at a fairly slow pace of 5 kilometers an hour. Since he wants to get a better workout, he decides to increase his pace to 12 kilometers an hour. What percent is current speed of the original speed? Okay, so the current speed is 12 kilometers per hour, and the original speed is 5 kilometers per hour. So we want to know what percent is the current speed of the original speed. So we would set it up as 12 divided by 5, which is 2.4. So there's our decimal. We want to find the percent, so we need to times that by 100 so that we get 240%. So the current speed is 240% of the original speed. Okay, so at the bottom here, I've included a summary of how to change between percents and decimals, fractions, and decimals. You might find this helpful, so you're welcome to use it. Otherwise, when you're working through your workbook questions, you can always refer back to your notes as well. Thank you.